On a beach on Goodenough Island, weeks after the battle, an Australian patrol finds something in the sand. A waterlogged diary. The pages are damaged but legible. It belonged to a Japanese soldier, name unknown, who sailed with the convoy. His first entry is dated February 24th, 1943, the ship still bound for Rabaul. He writes that the night before, he dreamed of a dragon rising out of the sea. His final entry reads, "Discovered by the enemy." Between those two lines, everything happened. His ship, the Teiyo Maru, is on the bottom of the Bismarck Sea, in water that covers her completely and always will. He is down there too. This is the story of how that happened. And why, from the moment he wrote that dream down, it was almost inevitable before it began. By February 1943, the Pacific War has reached a point of no return for Japan. Guadalcanal has fallen, the first major land defeat, completed in early February. In New Guinea, Australian and American forces have driven the Japanese back across the Kokoda Track and destroyed the garrison at Bunagona. The momentum belongs to the Allies. Everyone in Tokyo knows it. The immediate problem is Lae. Japan's garrison on New Guinea's northern coast is stretched and shrinking, cut off from adequate supply, holding a position that cannot hold indefinitely. The decision made at Rabaul is straightforward. Reinforce Lae with the 51st Division, 6,900 men. Or concede the position and watch New Guinea fall. The plan is to send them by sea, 8 transports and 8 destroyers, roughly 100 fighter aircraft overhead, a route that runs westward along the northern coast of New Britain, through the Vitiaz Strait, into the Solomon Sea, and on to Lae. The convoy will be commanded by Rear Admiral Masatomi Kimura, his flag on the destroyer Shirayuki. 2 generals ride aboard destroyers, Lieutenant General Hatazo Adachi, commanding the 18th Army, on Tokitsukaze, Lieutenant General Hidemitsu Nakano of the 51st Division on Yukikaze. Generals on destroyers. The urgency speaks for itself. The division's equipment is spread evenly across all 8 transports. Artillery, ammunition, supplies, so that the loss of any single ship would not be a catastrophe. This is careful, methodical planning. One transport, Kembu Maru, carries no troops at all, just 1,000 drums of aviation fuel and another 650 drums of other fuel, the operational lifeblood of Japanese air power at Lae. The ships are combat-loaded for rapid unloading. Everything is in order. The Japanese command believes the risk is manageable. They have been running convoys through these waters since March 1942 with minimal losses. The route is known, the tropical storms provide natural cover, and the Allied air forces in New Guinea, while growing, have shown a consistent inability to hit moving ships from high altitude. The calculation is that speed and weather and fighter cover will get them through. What the Japanese command does not know, cannot know, is that on February 19th, 9 days before the convoy sails, Allied codebreakers have already intercepted the radio messages detailing the convoy's route. In Melbourne and in Washington, intelligence analysts have been reading Japanese signals traffic for weeks. The destination, the timing, the route, all of it confirmed. The convoy's risk calculation is built on a secrecy that no longer exists. The trap is already set. The convoy just hasn't sailed into it yet. In August 1942, Lieutenant General George Kenney arrives in the Southwest Pacific to take command of Douglas MacArthur's air forces. He is 5 feet 6 inches tall and incapable of accepting that something cannot be done. MacArthur's chief of staff has been making decisions about air operations, overriding the air commander as though the position doesn't exist. Kenney walks into the man's office, puts a blank piece of paper on his desk with a single dot in one corner, and says, "The dot is what you know about air power." He is the rest of the page. The meeting is brief. Kenney's philosophy is not complicated. He believes in fast, low-level attack. High-altitude bombing against moving ships has failed consistently across the Pacific. The target maneuvers, the bombs fall into the sea, and the results are irrelevant to the outcome. There has to be a different approach. That approach is being built in a maintenance depot in Townsville, Queensland, by a recalled U.S. Navy petty officer pilot, named Major Paul Irving Gunn. Everyone calls him Pappy. Gunn's wife and 4 children are in the Philippines. When the Japanese occupied Manila in January 1942, they were interned at the University of Santo Tomas. Gunn had flown key personnel to Australia as the Philippines fell. He left his family behind. He knows what is happening to civilians in Japanese-occupied territory. He has known it for a year. What Gunn builds in Townsville is an act of concentrated fury. Kenney has told him to pull the bomb sight and bombardier out of the nose of a B-25 Mitchell and fill the space with as many .50 caliber machine guns as he can fit. Gunn fits in 4, then straps 4 more to the sides of the fuselage, all firing forward. 8 guns. The plane becomes nose-heavy despite lead ballast added in the tail. When all 8 guns fire together, the vibrations are enough to pop rivets from the aircraft's skin. Engineers at Wright Field inform General Arnold that the modifications are impracticable. The balance is wrong, the aircraft won't perform. Kenney's response, after the battle, is to tell the engineers that 12 of these planes have just sunk every transport in a Japanese convoy. 60 more are already being modified. Arnold practically runs the engineers out of his office. The weapon is paired with a tactic: skip bombing. A bomber comes in at wave height, 15 to 20 meters above the surface, releases its bomb 300 yards from the target, and the bomb skips across the water and slams into the ship's hull before exploding. The delay fuse gives the aircraft time to clear the blast. If the bomb misses and hits the water too close to the ship, the pressure wave crushes the hull plating anyway. Major William Benn teaches the technique to pilots who teach it to others. He is reported missing on a later raid before the year is out, but what he built survives him. Major Ed Larner commands the 90th Bomb Squadron. His men have been practicing on a wrecked ship on the reef outside Port Moresby. Kenney watches them from the shore. "They didn't miss," he says afterward. "It was pretty shooting and pretty skip bombing." He tells people he has a hunch that the enemy is going to get the surprise of their lives. The modified B-25s exist nowhere in American military doctrine. They have never been used at scale, but they are ready. And the convoy is on its way. And no one on those ships has any idea that the weapon waiting for them was built by a man whose family is sitting in a prison camp in Manila. The convoy slips out of Simpson Harbor at midnight on February 28th. 16 ships moving into darkness and into weather. For the next 2 days, the Bismarck and Solomon Seas are lashed by tropical storms. Cloud banks build to 30,000 feet. Rain comes in sheets. The convoy moves at 7 knots through heaving gray-green water. Visibility drops under a mile. No Allied aircraft can find them in this. The sailors on those transports feel the weather as a gift. Natural cover in a dangerous passage, the storms doing what 100 fighter escorts cannot. The unknown soldier is somewhere in that storm. He is aboard the Teo Maru, one of 8 transports. He has already written his dream down. He eats and sleeps and watches the rain. But the Allies are not flying blind. RAAF, Catalina flying boats from No. 11 Squadron are in the darkness above the convoy, tracking it by radar, keeping the thread of contact alive through weather that would defeat the naked eye. On the afternoon of March 1st, a B-24 Liberator from the 90th Bomb Group is detouring around a storm along the south coast of New Britain when the navigator looks down through a break in the overcast and finds 16 ships below. The crew counts them. 6 destroyers, 8 transports. The sighting is reported. The convoy disappears back under cloud. By the evening of March 1st, Kenney knows exactly where the convoy is. He begins positioning his forces. That night, Admiral Kimura faces a decision. The convoy is approaching Leh. The weather is beginning to ease. He can push through under darkness and have his transports in harbor by morning. Or he can circle through the night and arrive in daylight, which he believes will be safer for navigation in unfamiliar coastal waters. He chooses to wait for morning. It is not a reckless choice. Navigating 16 ships into port at night in an area with variable weather and uncertain charts carries real risks. Daylight entry is sensible procedure. Kimura is not being careless, he is being prudent, but by choosing to wait, he gives Kenney's air forces something they have been training for months to use. Time and morning light, and a convoy still at sea. Dawn on March 2nd. A force of RAAF A-20 Boston strikes Leh airfield before the sun is fully up, hitting the base that could scramble fighters to protect the convoy at its most vulnerable. The first chess move. By mid-morning, 29 B-17 flying fortresses find the convoy in the Bismarck Sea and go in from altitude. This is the conventional war. High-level bombing against moving ships, the tactic that has failed consistently since Pearl Harbor. It mostly fails here too. Several ships are hit, one transport sinks. The B-17s are met by 30 Zero fighters. 3 Zeros go down. The bombers absorb punishment, but all return to Port Moresby. One does not. A single B-17, piloted by Lieutenant Woodrow Moore of the 43rd Bombardment Group, is shot down by escorting Zeros. Japanese fighter pilots then machine gun the crew in their parachutes. When the men hit the water, the Zeros strafe them again. 3 P-38 Lightnings engage the Zeros responsible and shoot down 5 of them, but lose their own planes in the fight. Allied air crews overhead watch what happens to Moore's crew. Every man in the air over the Bismarck Sea on March 2nd sees it. The story is back in Port Moresby before the day is over. Among men who have been living in this theater for months, flying missions against targets they can't reach and ships they can't sink. The account of what happened to Moore's crew moves through the airfields like a current. It does not leave. That night, Kimura's convoy circles again. RAAF Catalinas shadow it through the darkness. The weather continues clearing. The forecast for March 3rd is bright sunlight. The convoy is still at sea, less than 30 miles from Leh. March 3rd, morning. The convoy enters Huon Gulf in brilliant tropical sunlight. Blue-green water, white foam along 16 hulls. It is the clearest day of the passage. The first aircraft appear at altitude. B-17s, high and distant, forcing the ships to scatter and swivel their anti-aircraft batteries upward. The familiar geometry begins. The Japanese gun crews know this. The ships maneuver. The bombs fall mostly wide. Then the bow fighters come in low. 13 Bristol bow fighters of number 30, Squadron RAAF, cross the water at deck level, close enough that their prop wash leaves trails in the surface behind them. At this altitude, to any lookout on those ships, they look exactly like Beaufort torpedo bombers making a standard attack run. The Japanese gun crews read the approach and respond correctly. The ships turn their bows toward the oncoming aircraft. The textbook response to a torpedo threat, presenting the smallest possible profile, denying the torpedoes a broadside target. It is the right move. It is catastrophically wrong. The bow fighters are not carrying torpedoes. They sweep across the line of ships with 4 20mm nose cannons and 6 wing-mounted .303-inch machine guns, tearing apart bridge structures and anti-aircraft positions and killing gun crews from mast height. The ships have turned their broadsides away from the bow fighters and directly toward the wave tops where Larner's B-25s are already coming in. Major Larner's 90th Bomb Squadron arrives at 50 feet. 8.50 caliber guns per aircraft, all firing forward, the nose of each plane a wall of fire raking across decks and superstructures. The skip bombs go in at 300 yards, hit the water, and bounce into hulls below the waterline. When they find the plating, the delay fuse gives the aircraft 3 seconds to clear. Then the magazines go. Shirayuki is the first ship hit. A bomb finds her magazine. The explosion breaks the stern off the destroyer. Admiral Kimura is on the bridge when it happens. Nearly everyone around him is killed. He is wounded, taken over the side, transferred to Shikinami while his flagship goes under. He has commanded this convoy for 3 days. He watches his flag go down from the deck of another man's ship. Tokitsukaze takes a bomb in her engine room and is abandoned. Arashio is hit and collides with the transport Nojima, disabling both. Aircraft attack from multiple altitudes at once. The high B-17S, holding the anti-aircraft fire pointed skyward, the medium B-25S absorbing what's left. The wave top. Strafers coming in below it all. The Japanese gun crews cannot defend against 3 planes at 3 different altitudes simultaneously. There is no textbook for this. Damien Parra is in the cockpit of a bow fighter, standing behind Flight Lieutenant Tochi Yurin, his camera running. He says afterward he was too busy to be scared. The transports burn, the destroyers burn. Oil spreads across the water and catches light and burns too. At 10:15 in the morning, 15 minutes after the initial assault, all 7 transports have been hit. 3 destroyers are sinking or already gone. 15 minutes. The 51st Division's equipment distributed so carefully across 8 separate holds so that no single loss would be catastrophic. It is all going down. The artillery, the ammunition, the medical supplies, the 1,000 drums of aviation fuel aboard Kembu Maru that the Japanese Air Force at Leh needs to keep flying, gone with her. The ability to contest New Guinea from the air, the entire material logic behind this voyage, sinking through 2,000 feet of water in the Huon Gulf. 15 minutes. B-25s return in the afternoon for a second wave. That night, 5 U.S. Navy torpedo boats move through the darkness, finishing off crippled vessels, scattering what is left. By dawn on March 4th, all 8 transports are on the bottom. 4 of the 8 destroyers, Shirayuki, Asashio, Arashio, Tokitsukaze, are gone with them. Of the 6,900 men who sailed from Simpson Harbor 5 days ago, only 850 reach Lai. Most arrive without weapons, without equipment, without the capacity to fight. Another 2,700 are recovered by destroyers and submarines and returned to Rabaul. Roughly 3,000 are in the sea. The battle is over. The aftermath is not. Kenney orders his air crews back out. The justification is stated plainly. Any Japanese soldier recovered from the water and landed at Leh will be rearmed and fighting in New Guinea within weeks. These are not men who have surrendered. They are men swimming toward a shore where a war is still being fought. The Allied air forces will not allow them to get there. For the next several days, bow fighters, Bostons, and B-25s sweep the Huon Gulf, finding rafts and lifeboats and barges crowded with survivors. A secret report from March 20th records the results. Crews return and file accounts of lifeboats overturned and crowds of men in the water, and strafing runs continued until nothing remains moving. Any survivors who slipped past the aircraft, the report notes, were at minimum 30 miles from shore, in water thick with sharks. The crews who flew these missions are not unchanged by them. Several confessed to acute nausea. Some carry what they did for years after the war is over. The order came from Kenney. The justification was the soldiers who would die in New Guinea if the 51st Division survivors were reconstituted and sent back. And behind the justification, present in every cockpit, was the memory of Lieutenant Moore's crew descending in parachutes 2 days earlier, and what the Zero pilots did to them. A Japanese act of cruelty became the cause of an Allied act of cruelty. That chain has no resolution. It is simply what happened. There is one final thing the sea gives up. Between March 8th and 14th, Australian patrols from the 47th Infantry Battalion are working through Goodenough Island when they encounter survivors from the convoy. Men who made it through the battle, through the strafing, through days adrift, only to wash ashore on the wrong island. In 2 flat-bottomed boats taken from one group, the patrols find documents sealed in tins. One of those documents is a copy of the complete Japanese Army list, the name and posting of every officer in the Imperial Japanese Army. A full order of battle. Units that Allied intelligence has never before reported. The document is translated and copied and distributed to intelligence units in every theater of war against Japan. Somewhere in the last hours of the convoy's destruction, a Japanese soldier placed this document in a sealed tin and tried to save it. He got it off his sinking ship across miles of open sea to an island. He did not know the island was patrolled by Australians. He did not know in the end what he was carrying to them. Japan made no further attempts to reinforce Leh by sea. The convoys stopped. In their place, barges, small coastal vessels, submarines, a logistics of desperation that could move. Supplies only in fragments, under constant threat from Allied aircraft that now hunted day and night. It was not enough. It was never enough again. The Japanese shifted to a defensive posture in the South Pacific and never regained the initiative for the rest of the war. Vice Admiral Gunichi Mikawa, the Japanese fleet commander at Rabaul, said it plainly. It is certain that the success obtained by the American Air Force in this battle dealt a fatal blow to the South Pacific. A fatal blow. His own assessment. March 4th, 1943. MacArthur and Kenney reported 15,000 Japanese dead to the American press in March 1943. The figure ran on front pages across the country. Documents recovered from the wreckage later put the true number at roughly 2,890. Neither man chose to revise his claim. Damien Parra, who rode into the battle in a Beaufighter cockpit with his camera running and came back with footage that showed the world what skip bombing looked like from 50 feet above the water, was killed in action the following year while filming combat on Peleliu. He was 32 years old. Weeks after the battle, an Australian patrol on a beach on Goodenough Island finds a waterlogged diary in the sand. February 24th, 1943. Last night I dreamed I saw a dragon rising out of the sea. The thing he dreamed was real. It existed in the maintenance depot in Townsville, where Pappy Gunn was pressing 8.50 caliber guns into a nose-heavy B-25. It existed in the training runs over the reef outside Port Moresby, where Larner's men practiced until they didn't miss. It existed in Melbourne, where codebreakers were reading his convoy's mail 9 days before he boarded his ship. The trap had already closed around him when he wrote that entry down. What he saw in the dream came from the sky, not the sea. His name is not recorded. His diary is in an archive somewhere. His ship is on the bottom of the Bismarck Sea, in water that covers it completely. It always will.